Hunted on the Appalachian Trail. The scariest night of my entire life was a close encounter with a later confirmed murderer when I was camping with my boyfriend in the mountains. It ended with us running for our lives down the mountain in the pitch black, clutching knives and a hammer for self-protection. It was the end of 2018, our first getaway together as a couple. We went to the Appalachian Trail in Virginia. We were naive. We thought it would be more romantic to camp out as far off the beaten track as possible. We walked really far into the wilderness and got to a spot where nobody passed us all afternoon. We were making s'mores over the campfire after it had just got dark. It was twilight. All of a sudden, my boyfriend, who has 20/20 vision, saw a man approaching us slowly. He was creeping up on his. At first, we thought it was a park ranger coming to tell us to put out our campfire. I began to hide the weed, thinking this was our biggest concern. My boyfriend called out to him, "Hey, can I help you?" We thought it was weird that he didn't have any kind of light on him. He didn't have any camping bag. Nothing for camping. Why was he out here so far with no camping gear at night? With no light? He sped up after my boyfriend called out and came right at him. He had this strange look in his eyes. The look was absent, blank, and weird. He didn't answer my boyfriend, he just kept walking right at him. Red flags going off at this point. When my boyfriend realized it wasn't a park ranger, he quickly put his hand in his pocket where he had a concealed knife. He made it clear he had a weapon. It was only after my boyfriend did this that the guy acknowledged us. He said something weird, "Oh, I was just wondering if y'all were having a party." Remember, we were miles away from a single soul and it was beginning to get dark when he began to approach us slowly without a flashlight. He had no camping gear with him, just a tiny drawstring bag on his back. After he asked what we were doing, we didn't give him any answers but asked him what was going on. He didn't answer. We just looked past my boyfriend towards the site. It was windy, so we had put up a tarp to shield ourselves. This also meant that the guy approaching couldn't see how many people were at our site. He asked, "How many people have you got with you?" He began to circle our site to check us out. He asked again if we had any other people with us and my boyfriend didn't answer. He carried on circling around our camp. Now, bear in mind, we had set up our camp on this crazy steep hill. It was the only spot for miles that was possible to put a camp. However, he told us that he was going to set up camp nearby. He proceeded to walk off in a direction straight up the hill. We knew for a fact he couldn't put a campsite there because of the terrain. Remember, he had no light, and no bag with camp gear. Nothing. We were silent. We listened to his footsteps on the leaves as he walked up the hill in this direction completely off the path. He walked for about 30 seconds and then his footsteps stopped completely. He was just still. Silent. We knew he was still there, but we couldn't see him. It was dark. At this point I was freaking out. I didn't want to seem like a pussy in front of my boyfriend. We had a talk about whether we needed to leave. My boyfriend handed me a knife and said if anything happens to him, I should run. At this point, I knew it wasn't just me freaking out unnecessarily. He said we needed to get out of there and to just grab essential items. I was scared that he was about to shoot us dead. Later on, when I told my boyfriend this, he said no, this is the type of guy who would probably prefer to stab his victims to death. We began to run down the trail in the pitch black with our lights off. For at least a mile. My boyfriend looked back to see him staring at one point. He ran behind me to protect me. This experience stuck with me. I still can't think of a rational or non-menacing reason why that guy was there that night. I've tried. Now this was at the end of 2018, but my boyfriend, now husband, and I were remembering it last night. I decided to type into Google if there had been any murders in the same place around the same time. There was. A few months after our incident on the same trail, an unhinged man with crazy eyes approached some hikers at twilight as it was getting dark. He behaved in a deranged and aggressive manner, before stabbing a man to death with a 17-inch knife. A woman he was with ran for her life down the trail. Finally, she raised her hands in surrender and he began to stab her. Somehow, she managed to get away. The killer carried on wandering the trail, and shouted out to other campers to give him a flashlight. They didn't, thank goodness. All of these detailed are the same as the guy who approached us. Same age, same deranged eyes, same lack of flashlight, same time to approach us twilight, same look, same place. The more articles I read, the more I realized this psychopath had been roaming the trails harassing hikers for a while. A few different people had reported him. Not just us. Apparently this erratic and violent psychopath was well known to law enforcement along the Appalachian Trail. His name is James Sovereign Jordan. We got lucky. It could have been us. There is a link to an article about the murderer below. We got lost in a forest and it was one of the strangest experiences of my life. The following is a story that took place quite a few years back now, however it still baffles me completely and I'd like to share it here. I'm a teenager and I've been in scouting/Boy Scouts for nearly all my life and I really enjoy exploring with my friends and being trusted more, as I'm older now. A few years ago me and two girls named Amy and Harriet were asked to head into the woods surrounding our campsite to find a long, straight stick suitable for carving into a point. Bear in mind that I was a lot younger back then. Harriet was older and Amy only 1 year older than myself. We had been walking in deliberately the same direction as to not get lost, and memorizing the surroundings as we went, in order to find our way back easily. About 15 minutes in we couldn't find anything to take back so we turned around to return to the campsite. That's the initial panic set it. The trees had almost unnaturally knitted themselves together in such a way that it seemed our path was non-existent in the first place. Like it had just vanished. We looked around 360 degrees and now everything looked exactly the same. Trees we could have sworn were different from one another appeared as all copies of the same tree. We kept walking in what we thought to be the correct direction, whilst shouting out for help, and eventually came to a concrete path, almost like a road, but very thin, separating the forest, splitting it into two. We didn't follow the road as it went in the wrong direction to our campsite. On the other side of the path was more forest, however nearby was an abandoned shack, likely used for storage or whatever else. We had no idea anything like this was out here in these woods, so we just kept walking. We eventually came to a road we didn't recognize. A woman wearing a pink and purple regatta outdoors coat walked past and we frantically asked her for the direction of our campsite, as by now, according to our watches and Harriet's phone, we'd been walking for an hour and a half. She said she'd never seen us before but she said there's another campsite in that direction. We followed her advice and eventually came back to our campsite. We frantically apologized for being so long and that we couldn't find anything. The leader Ian could see all three of us were shaken up and he stated confused that we'd only been gone 25 minutes, and that our free time was still going on. To this day this baffles all three of us, as our free time was 40 minutes long, and our watches and phones had said we'd been gone for hours. The forest we were lost in felt crushing and claustrophobic, like we'd entered an area that the concept of time didn't apply to. I believe in the paranormal, however this was so unlike anything I've heard or experienced before. It literally was like we had been in a time vortex or something, and that hours in the forest were only minutes in the rest of the world. The feeling was very strange and it stuck with me for the rest of the camp. Please like, comment, and subscribe.